Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone has been having an amazing week so far and you've all had a lovely weekend too. It's really windy here in Durham while I'm recording this voiceover, so I do apologise if you hear any odd noises in the background. Our house faces our back garden's quite big, so it's quite like an exposed area of space, and then on the side of us where my art room is, we've got like a vernal driveway in between me and our neighbour. It's like a massive wind trap, so it literally just like makes so much noise in this room and my bedroom, so I do apologise. But enough of me complaining like I do every video when it comes to me trying to do voiceovers. Last week I was really in a creative mood and I just wanted to paint every day and all day, and I actually managed to whip out some acrylics and get some actual canvas painting started and done. Here you can see me gathering some of the acrylics on my palette page and mixing up some colours ready for this painting. I was about to add more to it as I already had started this canvas painting, and I decided to start recording and add it into this week's video. And I was kind of just mixing up some colours of what I wanted to add for the final look of it as well. Once I got my base colours down and my base layers down, I tend to do base colours of about 4 or 5 colours for each canvas painting, and especially with acrylics just because they dry so quick, and I will do about 3 coats of that, and then which is just like a rough finish, and then when I go in with the finer details, that's when I soften up everything and kind of make it look how it's going to look as the final piece, if that makes any sense. This painting reminds you of something I have already done and created, you would be correct. If you guys have seen my plein air painting video that I did in Malton picnic area, if you haven't, I will link it down below in the description box for you guys and you can give that a watch as well. I did a mixed media sketch of a tree and some branches, and it was kind of on the more abstract side of art, and I really liked how it turned out and I ended up loving it, and it ended up being one of my favourite pages so far in my sketchbook. So I decided to do it again, but on a way bigger canvas, and use some of my acrylic paints. I did make the final piece look a little bit different from how I completed this piece in my sketchbook, which I will insert a photo now of my sketchbook piece, and then you will see obviously the final outcome of this canvas painting at the end of today's video. And I used a few different colours and I did kind of different effect on the branch work and a little bit of a different effect for the water and foliage. I just kept the general layout of the imagery the same as the sketchbook, but kind of different design, and just went with a bit of a different feel with my acrylics. For this canvas piece, I ended up mainly sticking with 4 main colours for the whole piece, with the exception of one extra colour to add for the water, as I ended up wanting the water to be a bit darker. The main body of these paintings, the colours I chose were sap green, burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown and Perusian blue hue. Other than the sap green, these main body of colours for the canvas painting were the Winsor&Newton Galeria acrylics. I will link some links down below for these paints that I used, and the sap green was one of the Winsor&Newton professional acrylics. I used these to mainly block out the main colours I wanted on the canvas painting, and then started with the water, then the green foliage, and then I did the tree branch part last. I did it in this order a few times, about 3 times for the main coat, just before everything was all smooth and there was no brush strokes left or any canvas exposed. And then after that I went in with the finer detail. Once I had the main parts down, I then got out some of the Daler-Rowney System 3 acrylics and used the Mars Black to darken up the Van Dyke Brown just to add some darker areas to the tree branches, and going back with the burnt sienna to lighten up those areas that I wanted to be a bit more softer and less dark and harsh. And then paintbrush wise, I really stuck with the rounded brush and the flat brushes. I used a mixture of the Galeria and the professional acrylic brushes that I have. I just kind of switched between the two and went for thicker and thinner brushes depending on what I was doing. I kind of used the smaller nibbed brush ends for the finer details at the end of the video. Even though acrylics are fast drying, in each interval I let the painting sit about 30 minutes to an hour, as I know acrylics dry really quick, but I give that little bit of extra time just to ensure that when I go back to it I will have easier time blending without accidentally removing paint off the canvas, as acrylics, for all they dry quickly depending on what type of acrylic you use. Certain companies' acrylics are a bit thicker and more tacky, and sometimes if you don't let that sit and dry properly, or if you're a bit like me with my acrylic, I do kind of palette knife some of it on, so there is thicker areas that I leave so it gives more of an edge off the canvas. Those areas can be a bit tacky, and if you do accidentally hit them and go back over them, it sometimes lifts up and then you expose the canvas underneath again. So, and that's the same with boards, canvas boards, normal canvases, anything you kind of do that on, even acrylic paper. So it's best to kind of just still let it sit 30 minutes, even though it is a fast drying paint. It's just better, but I tend to do more of an hour gap between each, and obviously we don't want any paints lifting off the canvas, do we? I had a little bit of leftover greyish blue in the Amsterdam Acrylics and the System 3. I used the rest of that to cover up 2 other boards, as I don't like to waste paint. Once again, I did about 3 coats on each of these. The little mini canvas is a Loxley canvas. It's so cute and I love it. And I forgot I had it, to be honest, so I just thought I would add that on. And then the other one is just from the range, and I think it was only about £2. They're quite cheap, and it's literally just like a canvas wood board, so it's literally just like a little wooden slab. I'm also going to use my sketchbook for reference for the little Loxley canvas, and I'm going to do my little lemonade jug, which I did a YouTube short on. I thought that would be a good design to add onto this canvas just because the blue is quite a cool tone, and I thought the little lemonade jug would work well with it. Once again, I will put a reference photo in so you know which sketchbook page I mean, just in case you haven't seen the YouTube short, and I'm not sure you can link shorts underneath, so I will just leave that. Canvas wood board, I did end up changing my mind on the colour I wanted, so for the final outcome, as I've decided to go with something else to paint on it, so I ended up using this lovely lime green colour. Green is my favourite colour, no matter what the shade it is. I like sap green all the way up to really dark green, all the way to viridian, to lime green, just any green, mint green, I love it all. Type of limey, real fluorescent green is probably one of my favourites, and I decided to go with that, and for this I was using the Amsterdam Acrylics, and it was really nice. Once again, 3 coats of this, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do on this canvas board because this is one of the canvases I don't finish in today's video, so I'm going to show that next week, and I'm going to leave it as a surprise for you guys, but I think it'll be a cute design once it's finished, and I can't wait. I'm so excited. Such a random little thing to mention, but I used to always gesso my canvases. I know it's probably the best thing to do, but these canvases, one, were already gessoed, even though when canvases say that, I know a lot of people still add another coat of gesso, but since it stated it, I kind of just left it for these acrylic paintings without doing any of that. It was one of them things, I used to always add gesso onto my paintings before adding any acrylic, But I don't know whether it's just my brain or I'm being silly and doing something wrong, but from my personal opinion and my art personally, I just skip that step because I don't find it really makes much of a difference, as I've sold paintings with a gesso underneath and I've sold paintings without one, and I never really have any different feedback. I don't feel like my paintings turn out or look any different, and acrylic's quite a thick paint, so the layer on the canvas tends to be quite smooth anyway, other than the bits that you leave indented or embossed on the canvas, if that's like your kind of art style, which I've done a little bit with this tree canvas painting. But yeah, it used to be a step that I always added onto my paintings, but now I just find I don't get a smoother blend with the acrylics when I have a gesso coat, and it almost doesn't grip onto the canvas as easy. I don't know if that makes any sense. Once again, I could be doing something completely wrong with that, but yeah, the gesso part of things is something I just completely skip. The only kind of thing I do a little bit, I've seen people do this with oil paintings as well. I do it with my acrylic paints. I always tend to have like a base coat underneath, so I'll either do an undertone of burnt sienna if I want more of a warmth tone to come through my paintings, or if I want a more darker, grungier look, I will go for like a more of a darker blue, like a Perusian blue, or something even deeper than that. I'll just mix a light blue and some black together. If I want a more cool toned to come through on the underneath of painting, that's pretty much all I do. Basically underpainting, isn't it, what it's called, I think. That's one of the only steps that I kind of add in now rather than the gesso, and that's pretty much how all I do to my canvases. Let that dry and then I just start doing the artwork straight away onto it. So whether that's the right thing to do, I do not know, but it works for me, and what works for us, I think sometimes we've just got to go with it. If it sometimes doesn't work for other people, doesn't mean it won't work for us. So that could be one little tip. If people are struggling with acrylic, I found I ended up doing acrylics more easier once I stopped adding gesso onto my canvases. So that could be a little thing for you guys too. This little section, I was just adding some more neutral and cool tone browns onto the tree trunk of the painting, once again using more of the Winsor&Newton. This was about the third and final layer, before I went in with the finer details and some Poscas on top to add in some of the tree work and the branch effect. So that was pretty much all I did underpainting for and base coats for that finished painting, for that final piece, Also, for the first time in a while this week, I got out my MIYA gouache paints. I had the 24 pan originally in the teal box. I went through those though instantly because I went through a huge phase of doing Studio Ghibli paintings. I've got a load of videos on my YouTube channel of them. They were some of my first videos and some of my favourite to do. I now have the, I think it's 52 or 54 pan palette of the MIYA gouache. I will link them down below as well. For price wise, these gouache, obviously they're not a professional range, but the amount of colours you get and the range of colours you get is really good. I think the MIYA gouache is definitely one of their more affordable paints that you could go with, especially if you're just trying them out for a hobby. They're affordable, they offer a wide range of colours. I think a lot of people do have these and tend to use them, but I ended up doing 2 field scenes with these paints, just from different photos I've took on different walks. When I've took little Cappy Pug out for his little walk, I just tend to take photos or videos around the scenery around my local village, as some of the fields around us are really nice. I am very blessed and live more in the countryside. I do live close to Durham, so technically Durham is considered a city, but it's quite a small city. It's more of a town really, I would consider it. But because it's got a cathedral, a church and a university, it's considered a city, but it's quite little. And I live in a village on the outskirts of Durham, so it is quite close to a lot of fields. There's a lot of fields, graveyards, just very scenic areas that are really close to me on our doorstep. And sometimes I forget about that until I'm on my walks. I'm like, have to remind myself that I am extremely lucky to live in quite a beautiful area, I must say myself. And I know you're probably heard the word graveyard and thinking that's very grim to think that as a scenic area, but I feel like graveyards is a place to grieve and mourn, but at the same time I feel like they do always tend to look really pretty and be very scenic areas. The trees are always nice that are planted in graveyards. A lot of people's gravestones, for all obviously may they all rest in peace, are very nicely designed and cool. The churches are always really pretty and they just make for good photos. I know it sounds awful, but yeah. And the fields around us, were very lucky. They're just very nice. We live next to a couple of farms, a couple of stables, so there's horses always out, there's sheep always out. So yeah, I'm very lucky when it comes to being able to just walk out for a couple of minutes and get some good reference photos. So that's what these paintings were done on. I just went for, like I said, 2 little field sketches, and I just did a light wash of gouache in the background and went in with a fan brush for some leaf effect on the bush areas and the tree areas in the foreground and the horizon of these 2 paintings. And I completed these in my Royal Talons Art Creations sketchbook. Haven't finished these yet, but I randomly decided to whip out the MIYA gouache again. Just did this little loose field scene. It's not finished yet. I'm going to add some Poscas and markers on top as always. Just did some kind of field and some hedgeway and a little bit of like loose clouds. And then on this page, I have done a poppy field. Once again, kept it quite loose, just added some Poscas on top of the gouache. I feel like it was quite effective though. I definitely have been loving, when I'm doing these kind of scenes, I've been really loving these kind of brushes. So like a fan kind of blender and then like an oval kind of, but it's almost like, it reminds me of like a makeup brush, this one. And kind of just, I kind of just been liking at the moment when I'm doing paintings, like a stipple effect with this, and then also kind of going in for more harsher bits to represent any form of grass or bushes or things like that, and kind of just going in with them and adding like a layer base and then adding some darker colours. So like I went in with a mixture of these, and then once that had dried I went in with the darkest green that this has. I mixed a little bit of black in as well just to deepen it a little bit more. Not black, sorry. I put a bit of the like reddy brown just to kind of tone it down a little bit more. I always tend to find grass and plant life in the real world has like more of like a red undertone to it, even though it sounds silly because it's just a green. I do apologise, I've got the window open because it's really hot today. So if you hear loads of motorbikes going around, I don't know why, but it seems to be motorbike crazy recently. Everyone's on them today, I don't know why. But yeah, so that's how that turned out. And then this one is now upside down. And then that's how that turned out. Finally, these are the final pieces of all my paintings I got done in this week. I hope you all enjoyed this week's video, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. If you did enjoy, guys, feel free to give this a like. It means a lot. And don't forget, if you're not already, give this a subscribe and hit that bell button to be alerted to any new uploads I do. And have an amazing week, everybody. And I will see you in next week's video. Bye.